So we're really starting 2021 off very strongly when it comes to space. I guess the first place I really want to start with you is the investor side of this, because we did see the names that in this industry that are publicly traded really rally on that Cathie Wood news, this ARK Invest news this week. But we do have a number of names that are actually in the pipeline to go public as well.
That's right. Investor interest in this category is higher than it's ever been. And 2020 was a really a huge year for space. Capping off was really a record decade. We're looking through the preliminary data for year end, and it looks like there's been almost $180 billion invested into the space economy over the last 10 years. And that's up from basically a baseline of zero private investment into this sector. So a ton of growth over the last 10 years, particularly over the last 5 years. And, you know, it's a record for across the board. Infrastructure, despite COVID, there was a ton of investment into the launch and satellite hardware. And of course, as the world goes more remote, we're seeing a lot of investment into geospatial intelligence applications. Companies and governments want to get access to information and insights.
Yeah, I want to get into that piece of the puzzle as well. But first, I'm just curious. I know you're an investor in this company, but how much of this is SpaceX or SpaceX effect and what we've seen in terms of the push down or the drawdown in launch costs and just in general the attention that has brought to this industry more broadly?
Yeah, you could say that this was the SpaceX decade. They are the apex player for sure, as Morgan Stanley's has called them. They're the market leader. And to be honest, if it wasn't for them breaking down the barriers to entry, bringing down launch costs and publishing their pricing 10 years ago, we wouldn't be where we are today. So SpaceX is a key player. They've done a lot over the last 10 years, but we're expecting even bigger things this year and going forward. The two big ones obviously are Starlink, their broadband internet service from low Earth orbit, and they're reaching rural areas. They got nearly $1 billion from the federal subsidies from the Rural Opportunities Development Fund. And we might see that come fully online this year, which is going to be big news in terms of the ecosystem and the types of companies that can build on top of that infrastructure. And of course, Starship, that's going to be taking us to Mars in the next few years, according to Elon.
Yeah, I'm all in for that Mars trip, Chad. So let me ask you a question as somebody that's a little bit more on the conservative investing spectrum, but wants exposure here. Because when you look at the few stocks that are space-related, pure plays, they're all obviously very expensive, very volatile stocks. Are there any publicly traded companies that have a big space component that you think the market has not yet fully appreciated, where you're not making a 100% bet on space, but you're getting some upside? Are there any names that you could think of or that you would tell people to look at?
Well, there's certainly some new companies coming. So, I mean, the context here is really important, right? 10 years ago, there was no private investment happening here. And it's really increased over the last 5 years. So what we're looking at here is really new. And it's going to take 5 to 7 years for these private companies to get capital and then make their way to the public markets. But honestly, in going back, you know, tying this into the ARK investment also, I mean, this is a great time to be launching this ETF because, like you mentioned, there's only a handful of publicly traded stocks to choose from, but we have a couple of new companies coming to the public markets over the next few months via SPAC. I think that space companies make particularly attractive acquisition targets for SPACs, and so we're going to see more of those in 2021. And I also do think we're going to see at least a couple companies, pure play space companies, going public the traditional route as well. So the ETF is getting started right at a moment where there's going to be more than.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.